Hey guys, tonight we re-stepping into a world where a single hairline could make or break your destiny. You're in Edo, Japan dusty alleys, the faint scent of sandalwood, and the echo of Gita sandals on polished wood floors. But no, you're not a samurai, or a merchant, not yet. That depends on how the top of your head gets shaped. Literally. Because in this world, a shaved line across your scalp doesn't just change your appearance. It declares your identity. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what Edo here. And hey, drop a comment with your city and what time it is right now. Let me know where in the world you. Restarting tonight's journey from now. Dim the lights. Maybe turn on often for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the door of Asmo Hut. The air is damp, and the rain has just stopped. A wood end plaque reads, 发结处 Barbers place. This is the first time you need a haircut in Edo. From today on, you are no longer an ordinary farmer's son, but Appa-san, who has been selected to work in the city. Your identity will be determined by the razor. Walking in the room is filled with the faint scent of burning incense, and light is coming through the wooden lattice window. The barber is squatting to boil water. He doesn't look at you, as if waiting for you to speak. You suddenly realize this is not like the wash, cut, and blow you imagined. This is a ceremony to determine identity. Hairstyles in the Edo period were not just looking at the face. They were a visual identity card, just like samurai swords. Merchants wear seals and monks hold bowls. Hair is also part of your social identity. Imagine whether the small piece on the top of your head is shaved or not can determine whether you are a samurai, a ronin, or a criminal. You may ask, why is hair so important? Well, because it is the most controllable external identity that the shogunate can manage. You can mix and match clothes, but hair, it's too close to you, too obvious, and hard to disguise. For example, the samurai SDNG by shaving the middle of the forehead, leaving only a tuft of hair on the top of the head, folded back. If you see a man with this hairstyle on the street, no one dares to neglect him even if he is wearing shabby clothes. But you are not a samurai yet. So you stand there and wait, waiting for the barber to turn around and use his hands to decide the future of your head. Interestingly, haircuts are not free. Rich people can afford high-level barbers. They are not called barbers, but faji. Not only can they shave steadily, but they can also help you fix your hair with rice, paste, and sprinkle camphor powder for fragrance. And you, I'm afraid, you can only choose the commoner style. The barber finally turned around, squinted his eyes, and looked at you for a few seconds, as if observing whether a piece of wood can be carved into something good. He said, how much of the front hair should be shaved? This is not a casual question. It determines whether you are an employee who is ready to be loyal to the master, or a craftsman who is still doing odd jobs at the bottom. Historians are still arguing whether these hairstyle rules in the early Edo period were promoted by samurai or from the temple system, because many hairstyles are actually used by monks, but the details are different. Monks shave more thoroughly, but the position of the edge line also hides mysteries. If you take this wrong step, you may be mistaken for a runaway monk, a criminal, or even a transvestite. Don't laugh. This kind of misunderstanding is really recorded in historical materials, especially in the decades when the hairline just became a social symbol. Everyone was trying to figure out the rules. You finally sit down. Behind you is a copper basin with as light steam. The barber dips water shovels and starts. At that moment, you suddenly realize, after that cut on the scalp, you are no longer you. You become the role corresponding to the hairstyle, and you must live it as it should be. And you may not survive the first day. You lowered your head, and the back of your neck felt slightly cold. The sound of the copper scraper sliding on your scalp was like a bug crawling. You didn't dare to move. You knew that this action was not just shaving, but more like a carving ceremony. The barber wrote the socially recognized identity on your head, and you couldn't say anything. You could only accept it. When the blade gently passed over your forehead, you felt a strange sense of peeling. It wasn't heat pain. It was the original, casual you being stripped away. Instead, there was Apperson with anum and responsibilities. Maybe a samurai attendant, maybe a merchant apprentice, or just Asmo pawn who pour EDT and Delavid read letters to others. But you knew that from now on, when you walked on the street, Others would know what kind of person you were just by looking at your hairline. The barber whispered various terms: 3-point front hair, 5-point shaving of the mole, and shadow of the temples. Each word was as strange, but soul, Emin, as asphalt. He was not styling. He was translating your life. In Edo, this kind of haircut is not just a formality. It can even determine whether you can enter certain spaces. For example, tea houses, bookstores, and even bathhouses that cater to high-ranking samurai have gatekeepers who set hairline standards in front of their doors. If the shaving mark on your forehead is not in the right position, even if you dress like a daimyo, you will be asked to leave. Some people lost face because of this, and some lost their lives because of this. You may ask, can't you wear a hat to cover it? The answer is, you can, but no one dares to do that, because covering the hairline is considered red, hiding your identity, which is equivalent to lying about your origin, unless you are a samurai dressed as a civilian to perform a mission. This is a serious violation of etiquette. The barber changed the razor and began to trim the sideburns. This is the most difficult part, because the line and length of the sideburns can also distinguish whether you are a housekeeper or a field worker. If you shave too high, you will be mistaken for a criminal who has just been released from prison. If you shave too low, you may be considered Red Ronin, those masterless samurai who have lost their master, the most unwelcome type of people in Edo society. Here is a very unpopular historical anecdote. In the middle of the Edo period, there was a famous hairdresser, Yamazaki Sahachi, who was said to be able to judge what hairstyle a person should be suitable for just by the sound of his footsteps and smell. He was known as the hairstyle fortune teller, and some samurai even lined up for 3 days and 3 nights to ask him to design their hairstyle. The hairstyle notebook he left behind still exists today, but most of the terms are difficult to decipher. After the last cut on your head, the barber patted your shoulder. It's stone? You looked up and looked at the bronze mirror. The stranger you stared at the stranger. You, a familiar but institutionalized face. You realized this is not dressing up. This is the first step to being incorporated into the system. Hairstyles not only change your interpersonal relationships, but also open or close certain channels. And this is just the beginning. You walked out of the hut, and the sunlight after the rain dripped from the eaves, as if outlining it with gold. There were shouts from the street, and a few children in the distance were imitating a bung with bamboo strips. You can felt but reach out and touch your forehead. It's empty, cold and freshly shaved, and it also brings a light sense of belonging. Historians have always been puzzled by this system of using hair to determine social roles. Some believe that this is a non-violent way of control. Some believe that it strengthens the visual cognition of class, and some scholars speculate that the inspiration of the Edo shogunate Tsuchiya hairstyles to classify people actually came from earlier Buddhist rituals and China, as Ming Dynasty court system. Whatever the answer is, you are now a part of it. As soon as you walked onto the street, you heard a quick click, click sound of foot steps. A team of samurai came towards you. Their steps were as neat as musical instruments. You instinctively lowered your head and stepped aside to make way, but you couldn't help but take a look at their hair. Styles from the corner of your eye. The typical Honda-style TSU kyo, with the sideburns neat lie close to the ears, the forehead shaved high, and a straight ponytail, like bun in the middle. This style is not just for good looks. You may think that Tushu kyo is an aesthetic, but in fact, this thing was originally designed for practicality. Ancient samurai wore a dumo armor helmet, and they were prone to sweating after fighting for a long time. The hair on the forehead would stick and feel uncomfortable, so they simply shaved it off. In Edo, this became a rule. Without a sukyo, you are not a samurai. If the sukyo is not correct, you are not a qualified samurai. You imagine yourself wearing an armor helmet. Your head is stuffy and hot, but when people see that your hair is not shaved clean, they think you are a fake. The scary thing is that they may really draw their swords on the spot and ask you to explain. Each samurai school has strict requirements for the tsukiji angle of the hairstyle. For example, the Aisu rule emphasizes long front shaving and short sideburns. The Hosaka is the opposite, with extended sideburns and a rounder forehead. These details are not only family symbols, but sometimes also ways to identify friendly forces on the battlefield. You pass by a Kakisho hair tying shop that specializes in samurai hair. Inside, A young samurai is covering his face with avon, while the barber adjusts the width of the middle part of his hair. It is said that if the middle part is not centered, it will be considered evil-minded. Yes, you heard it right. If the hair part is crooked, people will suspect that you are hiding some conspiracy. The barber gestured with his hands and measured the distance with a wooden ruler, muttering something like a spell. 2 centimeters to the left, not suitable. 3 centimeters to the right, very bad. You suddenly realize that in this era, hairstyle is not only a symbol of status, it is simply an extension of personality. Interestingly, women do not perform the tsukiji hair, shaving, ceremony. They also have a complex hairstyle system, but it is more to indicate marital status, age or occupation. Only men can really let their hairline determine their status. There are also unpopular cases that break this rule. In the late Edo period, there was a female spy who shaved her hair into a perfect top-knot hairstyle in order to infiltrate the shogunate agency. She was mistaken for a samurai, and no one discovered her for half a year. The portrait she left behind is still preserved in a private museum in Kumamoto, and her hairline is so clear that it makes people numb. You cross a stone bridge, and there is an Adis on the wall next to it. Ascertain Ronin is gathering under the bridge. Those without a hairstyle are not allowed to enter. You are stunned. Now you understand that the so-called no hairstyle in this society means that you are not a person, at least not a person within the system. How sophisticated is this culture of looking at faces? Scholars are still arguing. Some people believe that the shogunate deliberately developed this visual hierarchy to an extreme in order to allow each other to recognize each other at a glance and avoid confusion. Some scholars argue that this system itself is the shogunate's control aesthetics, hiding power in the details of the hairstyle. You pass by another temple and see a few children practicing shaving on the stone steps, using bamboo knives to simulate scrapers and shaving each other's sheets. They are imitating the adult world, as if they are practicing how to become a named person. You suddenly understand that this is not a decoration, not a tradition, not an option. For the Edo people, the hairline is the lifeline. You just turned into a relatively quiet side alley, and the air was filled with the faint smell of rice, bran and waxwood. There was a row of low-wood end houses on the left and right, and white cloth flags with the 3 characters "Haircut Master" were hung on the window frames. In this small neighborhood, LIVED, the most particular, busiest, and most unoffensive group of people in the entire Edo city, the royal barbers. They are not called barbers, and of course, they are not tonsurists in your impression. They are more like a kind of social sculptor using knives not to shave beards, but to shape interpersonal order. You gently approached an open haircut shop and saw 3 men waiting in line inside. One was flipping through a brochure, and the other had taken off his haori cloak, revealing a shiny forehead. In the middle of the house, an elderly barber was concentrating on trimming the hair of a middle-aged samurai. He used asama, deer antler scraper, to push the hairline back along the curve of the forehead, and then took out a dark blue fine brush too, filling asymmetrical shadow like painting. He didn't speak, and the customer didn't speak either. The atmosphere was as quiet as a temple, as if any distracting thoughts would distort the way of the forehead. You got closer and saw a booklet hanging on the wall. The cover was head-shape grid, a complex head, shape classification chart. You look carefully. It turns out that different skull shapes correspond to different hairline design methods. People with flat heads should raise the forehead line, and people with round heads should shorten the sideburns. A lucky head means that the hairline has uniform arc at both ends, and the middle is neither concave nor convex. In other words, your hairstyle is not whatever you want to cut, but your hairline fate is determined from the bone structure. The highest level barber in Edo Castle is the royal hairdresser directly employed by the shogunate. They only served the shogunate. High-ranking officials a few times a year, received high salaries, lived in a specific area, and even passers-by had to nod and salute when they saw them. The reason is simple. They held the power of life and death of the samurai image. Imagine if you were a daimyo and you were going to the shogun's audience tomorrow, but you found that your hair parting was crooked and your head was shaved into a dog-bitten style. It would not only be embarrassing, but also disrespectful. Disrespect means disqualification, and disqualification means losing political credibility. No one will listen to Amon with a problem with his hairline. Serious lie. when he talks about military affairs. This is not just your fantasy. There are real cases like this in history. A daimyo was laughed at by his colleagues during an audience because his hair was shaved crooked lie, and his career was blocked afterwards. The academic community has been debating the authenticity of this story, but perhaps it is precise lie, because it is difficult to distinguish between true and false, that it has spread more wide lie. You look at a particular lie, old scraper in the corner, engraved with senkawaya, handed down for generations. The boss noticed your gaze, smiled and said, "That is the knife that our master used to trim Tanayosuke's share." Tanayosuke, he was one of the most controversial figures in the political situation at the end of the shogunate. Your mind flashes to the extremely shiny tatami style moon hair on his head. The position of each hair seems to be arranged in a formation. You want to ask, why are there so many rules? But you suddenly realize that for them, this is not rules, but logic. Because in an era where order is supreme, every inch of a person's outline, even the turning radius of the roots and ends of the hair, cannot be free. It is a tool to distinguish your identity from others, and a sign of which step you are standing on. You are about to leave, and the boss suddenly hands you a piece of thin paper with the following words on it: "Hair is like rules, and lines are like fate. The way of head shape lies in 1 inch." After reading it, you look up, and the sunlight outside makes the top of each customer sheet who comes to get his hair tied up shine, as if coated with Azimo halo. You begin to realize that these hairlines are not just identity symbols. They are miniature rituals for Edo people to live in the present. You came out of the barber shop, and before you walked a few steps, you saw a young samurai in the dark blue haori standing on the street, trimming his temples in front of a bronze mirror and muttering something. You walked closer and found that he was not mumbling, but reciting the formula of head shape etiquette. Yes, in this era, hair is not just an image, but a code of conduct. If you are a samurai, then your hair must be within the range of 7 inches and 3 points. If you are a town person, that is, an ordinary businessman or craftsman, the length of your sideburns must be lower than the earlobe, but not too neat. And if you are a monk, sorry, you can keep your hair at all. Even if you just want to keep a little personality at the back of your head, you may be expelled from the temple. Behind this is an almost pathological order, obsession in Edo society, the shogunate, formulated as it of regulations called the system of hair of the shoguns, which clearly defined the scope and method of hairstyle, hairline, and shaving on the top of the head for different classes and different occasions. You can even imagine it as a hairstyle constitution. For example, every new year or major festival, the shogunate would issue a hairstyle inspection order requiring residents in the jurisdiction to uniform lifestyle. Their hair, you heard it right, it's a uniform hairstyle. Just like we modern people wear uniforms. Wanna be lazy? Wanna be unique? You may be called to the government office to register and find rice. In serious cases, you may be accused of not knowing etiquette, which was almost equivalent to scum at the time. And you also notice something that makes people laugh and hairy. The barber actually works part time as an authentication checker, because identity cards in the Edo period, such as the genealogy of samurai and the house, hold registration of towns. People are sometimes forged, but Apison Hairline cannot deceive people. There is a case record ed in historical materials. A homeless man pretended to be a samurai and sneaked into the feudal residence. He was doing well until he fell asleep at a banquet and his forehead hairline was exposed. It turned out to be a townhouse corner style. He was exposed on the spot and sent into exile. You have also heard, Aramer, that some people secret lie train themselves to play higher level hair styles in order to rise their status, such as how to use the handle of a knife to press out a samurai parting, how to use fingers to pluck out a waiter curve, and even how to make the hair fall naturally when you bow your head. The academic community has been arguing about whether this kind of fake head incident is common, but judging from the formula that the samurai just read, if you want to pretend to be a social class, you actually have to start with the head. You begin to wonder if women have a similar hairline hierarchy. The answer is yes, and it's more complicated. The hairstyle system of women in the Edo period can be written into a novel from Shimada KO2, Maru KO. Each type of hairband represents different ages, marital status, social status, and even conveys whether the family is wealthy whether the husband is alive, and whether the husband is faithful. However, this will be discussed in detail in Chapter 8. Now let's focus on you. If you were a down and out samurai in the Edo period, with nowhere to go, with only a-browed character in a hide ready to shave and become a monk at any time, then do you know what the only thing you can test with is? It's your carefully maintained hairline. It's like an invisible boundary, distinguishing you from beggars, and maintaining your last bit of dignity in front of others. When the wind blows, you unconsciously reach out and touch your forehead, and suddenly feel that it is no longer just a physical part, but a social seal. You stand on the cobblestone street, looking at the row of barbershops that are arranged one after another, like a social identity workshop. Yes, today you are going to try something new. Enter the world of an Edo barber in person. You squat beside a barber who is trimming the hairline of a merchant in his 50s. This is not a mechanical craft, but more like a delicate ritual that requires political sensitivity in the Edo period. Barbers were not just for everyone. They had official licenses and were under the management of a machi neighborhood, and were called kami yui. And according to your observation, they not only had to understand haircutting techniques, but also had to be familiar with the hairstyle standards of each class, festival changes, and even the new regulations recently issued by the shogunate. You watched him use a slender razor to carefully draw a slightly curved line on the merchant S hairline. This line is called the Redan line, which is slightly upward, representing a mature town man with stable status and an order life. If the angle is slightly off, it may become a middle-aged samurai style, which is troublesome. At this time, you notice that he takes out a wooden box from his waist, which contains carefully classified razors, feather brushes, small metal combs, and a little bit of scented powder. Haircutting is not only a visual trimming, but also an experience of smell and touch. Some haircutters use different scents, according to the customer's profession. Merchants use cypress scent, scholars use pine resin scent, and samurai prefer light sandalwood. Why? Because the scent also has to speak and be polite. While he was working, he whispered to the merchant about the weather, rice prices, and news from the shogunate. But the topic would never cross the line, because the conversation during the haircut also has equal differences. You can directly ask the customer if his family has a concubine, nor can you comment on his hairline moving back too fast. This is a kind of haircut etiquette in the Edo period. There is a view in the academic community that the duties of Edo haircutters are similar to status gatekeepers, especially in terms of aesthetics and norms. But some people argue that this statement overestimates their social status, because they are essentially a service class. But after seeing it with your own eyes, you can help but feel that these masters are more or less like notaries on the scalp. Try to imagine that if you were a newcomer in this industry, would you be complained to the town hall for shaving a hairline that was too civilian? Like for a mid-level samurai, of course. You have also heard of the existence of a black market haircut. Some exiled ronin or fugitives would ask unregulated mobile barbers to secret lie change their hairstyles by the river to avoid being tracked down, drawing a pretending to be a hairline, or imitating the shaving angle of a samurai from a certain domain are all styling techniques in the gray area. You have heard of an even more exaggerated thing. A person disguised as a lower-level monk sneaked into the city on the night of the New Year hair style unification day 1 year and shaved a forehead line that subtly imitated a mid-level samurai for himself. The next morning, he sneaked into the Lord's family temple ceremony, but was not discovered until sweat lines appeared on his forehead. You can't help but wonder, in what kind of society in the world would a person's forehead be shaved square to determine whether he can attend the dinner? But you, Dan, Thave, to worry too much now. After all, you are just sightseeing, and haven't shaved your hair yet. But you begin to understand that in this era, a barber shans determine who you are, more truly than your identity documents. The wind blew again, and the razor flashed gently in the sun, like a feather pen carving someone's fate. The streets were so quiet in the afternoon that only the sound of kikadas could be heard. You looked down and saw your reflection on the water. The hairline on your forehead looked a little messy. You realized that in Edo society, such irregularity was actually a bit dangerous. You decided to go to the most famous barber shop in Yabuki-cho. It is said that the haircutter there not only have first-class skills, but also understand identity shaping. Psychology. You pushed open the wooden door, and a faint scent of cypress hit you. The whole space was as clean as Adia House, but with a bit more solemnity. The master's surname is Izawa. He is nearly 60 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes. He nodded at you, motioned you to sit down, and then took out RL of drawings. You thought it was some kind of hairstyle reference album, but he unfolded a complete set of identity hairline style drawings. Are you from the town? He asked in a low voice. You nodded, and he nodded slightly. Then it can't be too flat, nor too high. It should be lightly tilted to the right, showing diligence but not ostentatious. He gestured as he spoke, like an architect calibrating a goniometer. Only then did you realize that haircuts in the Edo period were not meant to make you good-looking, but to make you correct. Depending on your status, there are strict requirements for the curvature, position, and elevation angle of the hairline. The Tsukyu, the shaved area of a samurai, is higher than that of a town person, and the edge is sharper, symbolizing decisiveness and responsibility, while the hairline of a monk is obvious lie receding, a farewell to the secular world. The most surprising thing for you is boy shaving, a hairline style specifically for children under 7 years old. A tuft is retained in the middle of the forehead, implying protection by the gods. This type of shaving ceremony is performed before Akot participates in a festival for the first time or goes to school, and is considered read the first step in social identity registration in life. The most amazing thing is the invisible identity, hairline. This is a secret hairstyle used by some high-class prostitutes or shogunate spies at special times. It looks like an ordinary town, i.e. hairline, but in fact, a little triangular gap is deliberately left at the corner of the hairline to indicate an extraordinary person. We can't tell, nor can we ask, Master Izawa said, softly, while shaving your hair corners. But if you meet that kind of person, it's best to pretend you didn't see it. The historical community has been arguing whether this secret hairline really exists. Some believe that it is just an exaggerated description in kabuki or kusuo paper. But when you see the seriousness in Master Izawa says, you can't help but believe it a little. What, 7 more peikoyar? Is that on the 5th day of the first lunar month every year? All barber shops in the city open. Onified hairline replacement day. On that day, you can change your identity, of course, provided that you can explain the reason clearly. It is said that an old scholar came to request to change to a samurai-style hairline for 3 consecutive years, because spiritually I already belonged to the samurai. The town hall finally approved it, but with a restriction: no swords. You have also heard of a mora, ritualistic way of shaving your hair on the wedding day. Your spouse will personally draw the other as family hairline, indicating that you have since belonged to ascertain surname and social function. You asked Master Izawa, what about you? What line do you shave? He smiled. I shave the service line, which is never too high or too low, and always below the customer. You looked at yourself in the mirror. Your hairline became straight again, and the whole person seemed to be restored by the social system in this world. Shaving your head is not to change your style, but to confirm the way you exist. Every time you shave your hair, you say to the world, this is me, I know who I am. You touched your forehead, and the line lay quietly on your skin, without any sharpness or publicity, but like a thin line that crosses class, etiquette, and psychology, firmly pulling you back to Edo. When you left Master Izawa's shop, the sun was shining oblique lie on the tatami road. You noticed that the pedestrians around you, meant to have opposite hairline order, whether they were samurai, merchants, or water carriers. Their foreheads were arranged in an order, lie manner like the stones on the street. You walked into the tea house and were about to order a pot of hot tea, but you couldn't help but start observing the hairlines of the people around you. There was Amen, who was dressed simply but behaved calm. Lie. His forehead was shaved very high, and even the hair on his temples was removed. He looked like a general. You instinctively lowered your head, and the tea girl whispered in your ear, don't be afraid. He is a failed samurai who makes a living by carrying book boxes for others. It turns out that a high hairline does not necessarily deserve a high status, but as long as you look like it, you can at least get into certain thresholds. This makes you start to think about another question. When the external image dominates the identity judgment, will people do everything they can to look like someone? In the late Edo period, barbering developed to an almost paranoid level of precision. Not only did the line have to be right, but even the order of shaving, the humidity of the hot towel, and the angle of the scraper had social meanings. It is said that if us have your forehead clockwise, it means that you are complying with the authority of the shogunate, while counterclockwise, it is a potential rebellious gesture. For a while, there was a kind of code word barbershop in Edo, whose customers were marginalized people who wanted to be something but couldn't tap. For example, the sons of wealthy merchants who had no money to buy surnames, tea ceremony masters who wanted to squeeze into the samurai circle, and even some mixed blood, illegitimate children. These barbershops would shave a similar identity line for them, wandering on the edge of society, infiltrating ascertained class in a vague way. Of course, the shogunate authorities were not fools. They sent hairline inspectors to secret line patrol during festivals or gatherings to see whose line was drawn wrong. And those identity pretenders who were caught would have their hair shaved on one side on the spot. Symbol EZNG that you can even figure out your basic positioning. What's more, it is said that a certain shogun ordered the formulation of the hairline standard atlas, which is divided into 36 basic line types, corresponding to the highest level of samurai to the lowest level of beggars. Each type has symmetry specifications and usage instructions, and even includes special functional types. For example, the hairline of water pipe workers should be S, lightly lower and parallel to reflect humility and obedience. You start to think it's ridiculous, but the tea girl shakes her head. It's not ridiculous. You stand on the street and can identify who can fight, who can manage, and who must be avoided within 5 steps. ISNT. This more useful than looking at identity documents. In fact, the social head system also promoted the development of another profession. Fake identity hairline masters. They serve people who want to temporarily lie, play other classes, just like today, as temporary actors. Sometimes, someone wants to marry a girl from a good family, so he pretends to be a local official. Sometimes a fugitive wants to take refuge in a mountain temple, so he changes his hairline to a monk. Although the fake line is fake, it is real if it is shaved well. This old saying, heard at the next table, is a bit like today's personality. The academic community is divided on this hairline coding system for social identity. 1. School believes that it is truly institutional and a manifestation of the visual power of the Edo period. The other school believes that it is just an exaggerated traditional custom and has no substantive effect. But when you witness the existence of these lines with your own eyes and see how people live around them, rise and fall and avoid them, you begin to understand that sometimes society is maintained by these Ximing Lai red undone symbols. You take the last sip of tea and suddenly notice your own hairline reflected in Asmo bronze. Mirror on the table. It is just right, not too high or too low, and even you can tell who you look like. This may be the safest way it looks. As you walk, you think about what the hairline standard atlas might look like. Will it be like a map of the Edo period, with each life trajectory marked in different categories? The more you think about it, the more you feel that these are not hairlines, but lines of society, lines of fate, and even lines of whether you can survive. You pass by a temple fair, and in the distance there is a bustling crowd, and the festival is in full swing. You squeeze into the crowd, but your eyes are attracted by a small stall. Not food, not divination, but identity hairline trial shaving. The stall owner is an old man with a half-inch beard, dressed simply but extremely clean. He pat Ted Asmo chair and said to you, "Come and try it. Shave your 3 lives and see." You hesitated for a moment, but finally sat down. The old man gently brushed your forehead with his hand and said, "First, let's try the Dai Mayo second sun line." He used an extremely fine cowbone scraper to draw every wide HALF moon line on your forehead. The you in the mirror immediately became more majestic, as if you were about to ride a horse to patrol the territory and listen to the secret reports of the retainers. The second type is the middle-level line of merchants. This time the line is lighter, and the part of the forehead that recedes is narrow, which makes it look cautious, humble, and capable visually. This is the most common hairline in Edo City. The old man said not to high profile, but not ignored. You nodded, feeling like wearing an invisible badge. The last type, the floating identity line, he said, drawing a left-leaning asymmetrical curve. The line is light and not easy to detect. You were surprised to find that you in the mirror had a strange fuzzy feeling like someone who no one can tell who he is. But everyone thinks you seem a little familiar. This line is used to walk in the gray area. The old man said softly. Advance to take advantage of the situation. Retreat to get away. You realize that in the rules of the game in Edo, not everyone wants to climb high. Some people just want to mix safe lie, not be noticed by too many people, and not be caught by any system. This kind of people has a special name. Wandering informants. Wandering informants are not a formal identity classification, but a state of existence. They have no clear social roles, but wander between various circles. Today they are messengers. Tomorrow they are servants of samurai families. And the day after tomorrow they may appear at the gate of the brothel as accountants. All of these are supported by a vague and flowing hairline. It is said that the top brothel shaves 5 different hairlines and performs 5 different lives in a month, and others never notice it. Some historians sneer at this, thinking that brothel spies are just legends, used to make up stories to coax children. But another group has carefully recorded the deeds of several hairline spies, and even believed that they are the core nodes of the Edo Underground Information Network. You stand up from the chair, and the old man nods at you. You are suitable for the second type. Maybe you are Asmel businessman in Edo. He handed you arag to wipe your forehead, and smiled and added, but if you want to retire later, learn the third type. You bowed to him to thank him, and walked back to the crowd. Suddenly, you pay more attention to every unfamiliar face. The fish seller has a crooked forehead. Is he an informant? The storyteller has his hair shaved terribly symmetrically. Is he hiding some secret? You realize that this city is not only made up of wooden structures and rules and regulations, but also of invisible threads. Threads of identity, threads of security, and even threads of truth. And you are now carefully walking among them. You stroll along the alleys of Edo, recalling the vague silhouette of the traveling hairline man as you walk. But your attention is soon attracted by a foam liar. His sing sound, the sound of air resort being sharpened on a stone anvil. You turn sideways and see an Incan's Pai Ku's little house at the end of the alley. There are dried mugwort and a wood ensign, with calm as Yosumikichi hanging on the door. You walk in, and a young barber is cleaning Arizor with a strange shape. He looks up and sees you, smiling slightly, as if he knew you would come. You sit down and he doesn't ask much, just gently says, "Do you want to experience the entertainer hairline?" You nod. Instead of doing it directly, he takes a load booklet from the wooden shelf behind him and opens it to you. There are all kinds of hairstyles drawn on it, but they are completely different from what you'd see on the street. Some hairlines are deliberately slanted, some have sharp corners at the temples, and some are even slightly concave in the middle, like Asmo Hook. Each style is marked with an identity in a strange font, such as Kodanchi Rakoga, Machibana Geisha, and Liquor Seller. This is the code in our artist circle. He smiled. You can just make up living by singing and dancing. Your forehead also has to speak. He first tried a hairstyle called feather corner, parting line on you. You looked at yourself in the mirror, and his light inverted VAV is shaved. In the middle of your forehead, and the temples on both sides were exaggerated, lie elongated, looking like a paper crane with its wings spread. He explained that this is a common style used by street performers to visually catch people. As soon as you stand on the stage, the audience will know that you are not a fish seller. Then he tried a virtual identity line, a shaving technique that can only be seen in layers under light, he whispered. This is for rakugo masters and storytellers. Are you telling a samurai story tonight? Then shave it higher. Tomorrow, are you telling Astri about a farmer meeting a fox spirit? Then shave it lower. You are amazed by the flexibility of this hairline. The identity of an entertainer is not printed on the ID card, but engraved on the hairline, he said as he put away the knife. Whatever line you shave, you have to live out that emotion. Otherwise, the audience will find that you are guilty. This reminds you of a lie circulated urban legend. There was a famous Kotan master who was mistaken for a Ronin samurai because he performed too many Chushingura stories. He was invited to commit seppuku to apologize in a tea house fight. Whether it was Amos, understanding, or a true exposure, scholars are still arguing. You asked him, does the geisha share line also have hidden signals? He smiled, mysterious lie, and said only one sentence. Even the way they shave the back of their necks has meaning. It is said that the small opening in the middle of the back of the neck is called, and the size and curvature of the opening represent the level and status. Some people can tell from that line whether she has been booked, whether she is single, or even whether she is being favored by Annabelle. As you listen, your heart chills. You suddenly realize that in Edo, it seems that everyone lives on Aslan's stage, and your hairline is your role card. You can change your style, accent, and name, but as long as that line is there, you are still in the play. When you left the barber shop, the sun just shone oblique lie into the alley. You, unconscious lie, touch your forehead, as if to confirm, are you still yourself today? In the distance, the laughter of Rakugo came, and the tinkling of wind chimes. You suddenly realized that in Edo, the real reality may always be beyond your hairline. When you woke up, it was light, and the words of the barber last night were still echoing in your ears. You touch your forehead, and your hairline had indeed been deformed. Now, you have to start today's work. You are not the original you, but a half-baked artist who is going to find a house in the town to tell jokes and earn a few copper coins to fill your stomach. But before you stepped out of the door, you were attracted by Asmo. It was a faint sweet fragrance mixed with the smell of charcoal and fresh sawdust. You turned your head and saw that someone was trimming a hairpin across the street. A group of hairpin masters in gray, short robes gathered around a long table, using extremely fine tools to carve patterns on translucent tortoise shells and ebony. You leaned over, and the master saw that your hairline looked familiar, and immediately nodded to you and said hello. While carving, he introduced these details to you. Not everyone can wear this kind of hairpin. With your kind of feather-shaped hairpin, it is very particular about what hair accessories to match it with. You squinted your eyes and looked at the ebony hair pin in his hand. At the tip is a mini stage with Athox holding Afin and laughing. He explained that this is a mono kaige no hairpin, specially prepared for artists who tell stories about monsters. It is not just an ornament during the performance. You can secret lie, pull out Asmo piece of paper with roll tips from it to remind you of the rhythm of the next segment. You asked him, do samurai also wear hairpins? He nodded. Of course, but it is more like a symbol, and you can just choose it casually. There is the Gingdao Now hairpin, which is as straight as a knife, representing the right way. There is also the Yinhua hairpin, which is black lacquer on the outside, but when it turns in the sun, it will reveal tiny cherry blossom patterns, which is what ninjas like to use. You widen your eyes. History books never talk about this. He continued to tell you a little-known fact. It is said that in the late Edo period, a style called Kokoro Wari B became popular. A black hairpin was used to insert an inverted heart-shaped hole in the middle of the butt. Most of these people were lovelorn has or widows who died of their husbands when performing sad plays, but there is also the danger of confusion. He sighed. There was a mixed-race artist who made a mistake and wore a black rain hairpin when telling a comedy story. It is a special accessory for widows. The audience was shocked and thought someone had just died in his family. Academia is still controversial about whether wrong lie wearing hair accessories will really cause social reactions. Some people think that ordinary people don't really care that much, while others emphasize that details are rules. He handed you a hairpin. What story are you telling today? You thought about it. It's about a fox turning into a monk and cheating for wine. He smiled. Then you have to wear this. It was a hollow glass hairpin with a grain of rice floating inside. This is called the alcoholic language hairpin, and the audience will know at a glance that you are doing a comedy show today. You accepted the hairpin, thanked him, and started walking towards the tea house on the corner of the street. A little girl bowed to you. Her hairpin was in the shape of a pink plum blossom, indicating that she had just entered the industry, and her identity was a Flower Street apprentice. You suddenly realize that almost no one in this city wears the wrong things, because everyone has learned how to act well since childhood. You stand on the street for a while, and the wind blows the newly shaved hairline on your forehead like a transparent script which has written how you will live today before you realize it. You smile and walk into the tea house. As soon as you step into the tea house, the air is immediately filled with a warm scent of sweet wine and charcoal. The little tea boy looked up at you and saw the fresh feathered hairline on your forehead. He didn't say anything, but just pointed at the small stage behind you. You nodded in understanding. Touch the bun that hid the alcoholic hairpin, and thought about the beginning of tonight's show in your mind. The audience entered one after another, including fishmongers, weavers, and the Ronin who was dressed in tattered clothes but sat upright. His hair was shaved very high, almost a sky-high hairline style that only high-level samurai dared to keep, and it made your throat tighten when you saw it. You jumped onto the small stage and just stood there. There were a few coughs from below. A middle-aged uncle shouted, "Hey kid, what are you talking about today?" You pulled out the hairpin and gently turned it in your hand and smiled. The fox got drunk and became a monk. The whole audience burst into laughter. You, secret lie, breath, heaved a sigh of relief and began to tell the story. How the fox stole the monk's robes and used the rice bowl to trick wine and food, and how the old cat in the temple saw through it and finally had to recite the Hiccup Sutra all night to atone for his sins. You imitated the fox burping, which made the weaver girl beside you laugh and lean on someone's shoulder. But just when you talked about the fox secret lie, sprinkled rice wine on the monk sheet, the man dressed as a trader suddenly said, "Your hairline should not be worn by an artist." The whole tea house was silent in an instant. You were shocked. You actually experienced this scene in a dream a long time ago. He stood up and walked to the front of the stage. His eyes were calm, but his hand was already holding the handle of the knife. You suddenly realized that he recognized you. Your hairstyle yesterday belonged to another social class. What should you do? You opened your mouth and wanted to say something to resolve it, but your throat was dry, and you only spit out one sentence. Foxes, ... sometimes have to play monks. There was silence for 3 seconds, and suddenly there was a burst of laughter in the tea house. This time it was not for the joke, but for this unexpected improvisation. The Ronin's mouth moved, and he actually nodded and returned to his seat. You continued to perform, even more devoted than before. People drank tea and listened to you talk about how the fox secret lie sang in the temple, laughing and clapping the table. After the performance, the tea house owner quietly came over and stuffed a bag of snacks into your hand. He whispered, "Be careful with your hairline. The rules of the entertainment industry are not a joke." You nodded. He then asked you, "Do you know, there was an artist in Edo City who shaved his hairline like a noble as air salt during a performance in the palace. He was mistaken for a poor nobleman and was recruited to be a royal storyteller." You were speechless. He sighed, of course. Some people say he pretended. This matter has always been controversial in the academic community, whether he was accidentally hit or carefully planned long ago. You left the tea house, and the night was as dark as ink. Under the paper lanterns on the street, an old woman was helping her grandson tie a head scarf. She has a forehead and natural hairline, which is the standard clean forehead style for elderly people. You suddenly feel envious. Hairline is not just a hairstyle. It is simply a pass and a social flag. You touch the forehead line that you are not used to yet, and understand, you act like an artist today. But your past and your hair roots are still reluctant to let you go. You walk into the night alley. The wind blows the tiles, as if someone quietly opened a quieter performance on the roof. Star on the school border. You woke up early, before dawn. The streets of Edo were lightly covered by fog, as if quietly wrapped by a layer of wet cotton. You looked into the bronze mirror and wiped the hairline on your forehead with your palm. It no longer stung, but the feather horn still looked so new and so different from you. Today is your test day. You are going to visit a legendary family of hairline masters. Their ancestors have been shaving the general's hair since the first Tokugawa generation. It is said that they can judge whether a person is loyal, suitable for officialdom, or against etiquette just by the hairline. You silently recited their sir, named 3 times in your mind. Kamatani family. Then you sorted out what you want to say today in your mind. Put on the hakama that you just ironed, and your forehead was so flat that every hair lay obedient, lie on the edge. The small stone lamp in front of the door has been lit, and when the door panel opened, it was an old man. He bowed slightly, said nothing, and only motioned you to go in. You step into the courtyard and find that there is no grass or trees around, only gravel on the ground, and rows of wooden mannequins are slowly illuminated by the sunlight. Each of these mannequins has a different hairline. There is the shaved round top of the Warring States period, the oblique feather cut created by the Ronin, and the extreme style that you have never seen before, which shaves the forehead almost to the eyebrows, as if the whole face is displayed as a family emblem. The old man leads you into the house. There is a row of cushions on the ground, and a low table in the middle. On the table are knives, brushes, pliers, hairpins, braziers, and a thick hairstyle illustration book. As soon as you sit down, you hear him speak. His voice is low and clear. You shaved the feather horn yesterday. Do you know who it originally belonged to? You shake your head. He nodded, opened the hairstyle book, and stopped at a page. There is a painting on it. A young man carrying a medicine box, walking in the mountains, and his hairline is what you look like now. The feather horn hairline originated from ancient pharmacists, he said. They shaved their foreheads so that patients could see their eyes and know that they would be saved. But in Edo, this hairline was later misappropriated by No performers and became a symbol of tragic roles. You suddenly understood. You didn't play someone yesterday, but wore a tragedy mask, the old man continued. Society uses hairlines to distinguish between the noble and the humble, and ordinary people use hairlines to distinguish between good and evil. But Ariel Hairdresser knows that they are a kind of language. He handed you Asmal brush and asked you to apply some rice paste on the edge of your hairline, saying let the hair remember who you are. Your fingers trembled slightly, but you were focused, like writing the last stroke of calligraphy. What you brushed on was not only the paste, but also the decision you made for yourself at this moment. You asked him, then ... is there a hairline for free people? He was silent for a while, then took out a piece of paper from his sleeve and slowly unfolded it. There was a hairline that was almost not shaved on top, with a natural transition of the hairline, shaped like a spring hillside. This is the legendary Kazin hair, he said. It is said that it was created by a cross-dresser in the early Edo period. It is not attached to any class, but it is too beautiful and was later banned by the shogunate. You looked at the painting and murmured, so the truly free hairline was not allowed to exist from the beginning. He chuckled. Historians are still arguing whether this hairline existed or was imagined by later generations. You stood up and bowed. When you left the Kamaya family, it was already bright, and the sun was jumping between the tiles. The hairline on your forehead slowly softened in the sunlight, as if it had changed from a Mark II, a kind of personal belief. You then too know, when you will, as have your head next time. Maybe never again. Maybe you have already grown your own kaze in hair in your heart. You start to notice one thing. Every 7 days, the barber's door is crowded with people, and they are not there for haircuts. You observe quietly and find that many ordinary people and even some low-ranking samurai will line up on the hair festival day to let the barber check whether their hairline is out of bounds. What is out of bounds? Simply put, it means that your hairline is crooked, not shaved straight enough, or there is a tuft of unnecessary hair on the corner of your forehead. These hairline freedoms that seem commonplace in modern times were slips in social order in the Edo period. You can't grow your hair randomly, just like you can't talk nonsense. As you listen to the barber say this, you stare at the small sign hanging on the beam. If the hairline is not neat, you will be fined 8 silver coins. If you are a repeat offender, you will bow 30 times. You try to ask, this is not a religion, nor a law. Why can the hairline punish people? The barber sighed and said nothing. He just extended his little finger and pointed to the corner of the wall. You walked over and saw that it was a wooden board with dozens of hairline tabo, os dense lie engraved on it, like some kind of ancient code. You noticed a particular lie. Small note. If someone without status imitates the hairstyle of an aristocrat, the person who handles it should report it to the relevant department. Your mind buzzed. This is not a hairstyle aesthetic, but a map of class boundaries. And not only you, but also the barber is being supervised. You have seen an old customer who came to change his hair a week in advance for his son's enrollment. It turned out that the child was going to enter a temple school, and he had to shave a half-moon style hairline, which symbolizes purity and purity. But the child's brow bone was too low, and the shaving looked like a Ronin style. The father was so angsty, OS, that he turned around and around, and the barber's forehead was sweating. He didn't dare to cross the level at will, so he had to take out a special fine comb and try to rub out the moonlight feeling. You looked at this funny and serious picture, and suddenly felt that hair is not a personal matter at all. In Edo, it is more important than your last name. The academic community has been arguing, are these hairline systems forced by the shogunate or the product of self-discipline of the lower class people? You have heard 2 schools of thought. Some say it is to control the flow of identity, and some say it is because the Edo people are too particular about sense of order. Even if they are poor, They have to shave clean like a decent person. But you think that neither is the point? You begin to think of the legendary geisha, who is said to have secret lie shaved her hair into a man-lie war style on the last night, and then rode through the city on horseback, and no one has seen her since then. I also think of a barber deep in an alley, who is said to specialize in customizing hairlines for unidentified people, so that they can hide themselves in chaos. You suddenly realize that the hairline can both reveal who you are and become a disguise for your escape. Late that night, you stood in front of a bronze mirror, picked up a wet towel, and gently wiped your forehead. You don't want to shave, but want to see what it will look like. If you let your hair grow naturally, maybe it's messy. Maybe it's not in accordance with the rules, but that's exactly you. You lie back on the tatami. The moonlight outside. The window is like a silver comb, quietly brushing across your forehead. You remember what the barber said. You think we are cutting hair, but in fact we are cutting history. On your last day in Edo, you choose to go to the barber early in the morning, not for a haircut, nor to see who shaved wrong, but because you suddenly want to know how they would shave you if you didn't belong here. The barber squinted, looked at you for a while and asked, "What kind of hairstyle do you want?" You shook your head and said, "It's up to you." He smiled, the kind of smile that seems to be seen through your thoughts by an old Edo man. Then ILL really come casually. You sit on the couch. He puts a white cotton cloth on your shoulders and gently passes his fingers behind your ears. With careful but skilled movements, you look at the wooden plaque in the corner and the straw wind chimes hanging upside down on the eaves, making a low sound, and suddenly feel that the whole city is quiet. "Are you a samurai or a traveler?" he asked softly while shaving your sideburns. You smiled and said, "Neither." "Then what are you doing here?" "Edo people there. Welcome, people without hairlines." You replied, "I'm here to borrow scalp too. See how history is engraved." He was stunned, then laughed out loud. This is the first time someone has said it so poetically. You think of the various hairstyles you've seen. Along the way, moon shadow. Shaved represents humility. Butterfly style is most life a female guest has. And wild goose hair was popular in the middle and late Edo period and was Kansai red too. Fancy, and was worn by the authorities. You also remember what the scholar said. The aesthetics of Edo people are ethical. They don't just care whether you look good or not, but whether you should look like you are now. You think further and think of the freedom of hair. Styles in modern society. You can dye your hair, shave it off, keep a bob, keep a slicked back hair, ... But in Edo, each of these represents ascertained social stance. The barber stopped and suddenly whispered, "Do you know? There is a rule in our profession." You nodded for him to continue. Some identities cannot be shaved. Some hairlines cannot be touched. If you touch them, both you and him will disappear. You are not sure if what he said is an exaggeration, but the flash in his eyes at that moment is like he has experienced some secret. He finally took out tooth comb and gently pressed an arc on your forehead. This does not belong to any class. Just for your memory. You looked down and found that the arc seemed familiar, but you couldn't find the source, as if it was a symbol of freedom. That was out of the social grid. You walked out of the barber shop. The sun was shining on the street. The cat in front of the rice shop rolled, and the children under the paper umbrella were playing pot throwing. You suddenly realized that the city of Edo is actually like a huge scalp, and the barbers are the quietest. Writers in this city, they don't talk, don't fight, but through strands of hair, they mark the hierarchy, etiquette, fantasy, desire, and escape of the entire era. You touch your forehead, leaving that faint arc. You know that it will soon be covered by modern hairstyles, but it once existed. History is never a thing of the past. It is every hair on your body. It is the shadow you once looked at carefully at night. It is the moment when you stood in front of the mirror and whispered, "Who am I?" The night slowly flows into the room now. Like from the corner of Edo, the fan is still turning gently, making a soft bass like a wind chime. And you sit there. Your eyelids begin to fight slightly. You have gone through 15 chapters. Your scalp has been shaved countless times, and your identity has been peeled off, layer by layer like a hairline that has been shaved continuous lie, leaving only your true outline. You begin to realize that history is not a heavy brick, but a gentle story as thin as a hair. They are hidden in a temple, swirled in the light of a certain evening, and finally fell silently into your dream today. You don't need to understand too much, nor do you need to analyze too thoroughly. You just need to close your eyes and feel the coolness of the razor passing over your forehead. You just need to remember that In that distant Edo morning, you once sat on the tatami and listened to a barber say to you, "This hairstyle belongs only to you." Now the story is over. The evening breeze caresses and the lights dim. Your dream begins from this moment.